Shalom everybody, and welcome to Translating Hebrew. We are on week number 6 now, and I don't have the URL up here because you probably have it memorized by now, but in case you don't, you'll go to theregathering.com/page/PFT Hebrew 4, and from there you can access the notes for this class. If this is your first time seeing any Hebrew class in this series, we are quite a ways along now, so you can go back on YouTube at the Passion for Truth video channel, and the beginning Hebrew courses will take you through the alphabet and vowel sounds. If you're already familiar with those, you can skip right ahead to the intermediate courses, which start getting into grammar and some more vocabulary, and take it from there. All right. Well, before we jump in, we have quite a bit of vocabulary to cover for this next set of verses. I've got 10 words up here. There's actually a couple more, but some of them you already know, even though you don't know it yet. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into that. All right, first off, this is Dalet Shin Aleph, pronounced Deshe. And Deshe is grass. If after our course on Genesis 1, you happen to read through the rest of Genesis 1, you might recognize this word. It's mentioned on day 3, the grass that came up from the ground. It was created on day 3 of the creation story. So Deshe is grass. And specifically, it tends to refer to green grass or new young grass. Chet Samech Reish is a verb which means to lack. Or to be absent, or to be missing. Okay, it's referring to something that's gone, or that's not there. Chasar. Yes, it is a reish. Yes, not chesed, which means mercy, which is not related. Chasar means to lack. Na'ah is a feminine noun, and it's translated pasture. The root of na'ah has to do with pleasantness. So the name Naomi is related to this, but it's a different root. Nun aleph mem. This is nun aleph he. But anyway, so a pasture or a pleasant place, a resting place, would all be adequate translations. But that's kind of pasture in the sense of a nice place of solace and tranquility. Okay, so Deshe, Chasar, Na'ah. Lima'an. Lima'an is a preposition. And lima'an means for the sake of or for the purpose of. You might see it translated because sometimes, or just for. But literally it's for the purpose of whatever comes next. Okay? Menucha, mem nun chet he, is a feminine a feminine noun. And menucha means a resting place. So it's similar in meaning to pasture. We are. Similar idea. The root of this is related to the name Noach, or Noah. Okay, Noach means comfort, and menucha is a resting place or a comfortable place. All right. And I don't have these in the notes. I should, but I don't. So if you're watching this on video, you can pause the video. If not, then hopefully you have a good memory. So yes, screenshot would be good too, if you have that ability. In fact, I'll give you 5 seconds. Well, that's not enough time. Not enough time. But yeah, I'm thinking more of the people online. You guys, you can get this anytime. But all right, so here we have a masculine noun, Manggal. Manggal. Makgal is a path. Now, there are many words in Hebrew for a path or a way or a road, derech being probably the most common. Makgal is a path in a different sense. It's more of a path that's been created by, well, this is getting terribly specific, but it's a path created by an ox pulling a cart. Okay? This ayin gimel lamed root pertains both to oxen and to the things that oxen pull. So this path is indicating a path that's been formed by travel with carts and oxen. Okay? So it's sort of it'd be basically an established path between towns. Okay? It's
not a derrick.
Yeah, or between houses. You know,
it's
it's.
More analogous to a road the cars would drive on.
Yeah, you know, sort of a. It's going to take since it's pulling a cart, it's going to take a road that's easy to travel. All right, and it's also going to be a road that has ruts in it and that's easily seen. You can easily see the path. So it basically it's a path, but that's kind of the more specific undertones of that word. All of these words have something in common. You know, they all have to do with sort of shepherding terms, which you'll see is quite appropriate when we get to the verse we're going to translate. All right, nun he lamed is a verb that means to lead, and nun chet he is a verb that means to guide, which is basically the same thing as to lead. They're very, very similar in meaning. Nun chet he has sort of a somewhat gentler connotation than nun he lamed. Not that nun he lamed is harsh, but there's definitely more of a sort of a gentler connotation to nun chet he.
I try to guide my goats to the barn, but sometimes I have to drag them.
Yes.
I don't think that would count as leading.
Goats are not easy to guide. You have to be a little more harsh a lot of times with them because they're so stubborn.
They're stiff-necked.
Stiff-necked, yes.
Their neck, and they go down, and their neck being stiff does not allow you to
Yes, they know what they're doing.
So when God called Israel stiff-necked, he was saying, you're supposed to be my sheep, you're being a goat.
Yeah, sheep aren't, while not as stubborn, sheep have the disadvantage of not being as smart as goats. So, make of that what you will. But anyway.
Led to the slaughter of them.
All right, another verb here. We've got a lot of verbs today. Resh beit tzadi. It's a verb that means to lie down. And this verb typically applies to animals. It's not like a human to lie down and go to sleep. This is sort of an idea of bedding down. It's hunting season, a deer season, rifle season to be specific here in Missouri. And so as deer hunters know, deer find places to bed down. And you can recognize those places by the grass being in sort of this circular, hollow, flattened area in the woods. Deer are the only animals around here large enough to make such formations. But they don't always sleep there. Sometimes they just hunker down there. They're not sleeping, they're just resting for a bit, hiding from the cold and wind, okay, until times are more suitable for them to get up and try to find some grass peeking through the snow. Not that it's snowing here, it's not, but it can be at this time of year. So, but yes, so the idea though with this is more of a bed down idea, okay, lie down. It's not necessarily sleep, but it's just kind of chill out for a bit, right? Something that you see all kinds of animals do all the time, especially if you're at the zoo. So, because they have nothing else to do. But in the wild, of course, animals do this too, right? They're not always sleeping, they're just relaxing, right? It's like a... everything does. We should do that more, probably.
Yeah. Is that what Shabbat's for? Shouldn't we lie down right now?
Yeah, today is a great day to do it, actually. All right, and finally, ro'eh. Ro'eh is a masculine noun, and that is a shepherd. And so as just to clarify, you'll see other words that are spelled resh, ayin, hey, with different vowel pointings, and those mean different things. Rayong is a friend, actually. Rayong is your friend or your neighbor, another translation. But Ra'ah is evil or wickedness, and there's another one too that I'm not thinking of right off the top of my head. But anyway, this particular one, though, Ro'eh, is a shepherd. Okay? So that is the essential vocabulary for this week.
And that word is in today's core portion anytime next week. I recognize it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you'll see in your notes that there is a new verb conjugation. And in fact, it's a new binyan that's being covered, and that is binyan hif'il. So we've gone through most of the pa'al, or also known as the kal, which is the simple conjugation, the pl, which is usually sort of an intensive form of the kal, the hif'il, the hif'il in the third person masculine singular past tense. Okay, this is hif'il. Hif'il usually adds a causative sense to the verb that is being used. So if in the pa'al we have a verb katav, okay, so I'm going to write this out in the third person masculine singular past tense. So katav is the root that means to write. So the third person masculine singular past tense would mean he wrote. He wrote. If we conjugate this in the hif'il, yes, hichtiv, this would mean he caused to write, or he dictated. He said something and somebody else wrote it down. So not cause as in force necessarily, but cause as in was the cause of the writing even though he didn't write it down himself. So this, he caused to write, or he dictated. Okay? In other words, you can do the same thing with. Now, the hif'il doesn't always add a strictly causative sense to a word, but a lot of times it does. A lot of times that's the function of the hif'il. And actually, we'll see two examples of hif'il in this week's verses. One of them adds a definite causative sense, and the other one, it's just conjugated in the hif'il, but it doesn't necessarily add a causative sense. So it can go either way, but kind of the general theme to the hif'il is adding a causative idea to a verb. And the hif'il has some defining characteristics. You'll notice that in the past tense, and again, I'm totally relying on the notes. I'm not going to write this all down so that we can get into the translation, but it's all in the notes. You'll notice that in the past tense, it always has the hey prefix in front of the verb, and then it has the usual suffixes that you would add to the past tense for the kal or the pl. Okay, so these suffixes are pretty consistent through all of the conjugations. And so the hif'il is identified primarily by that hey prefix in the past tense. And you'll notice that in the future tense, and also, yes, in the future tense, there's usually that yod between the second and third radicals, and the first vowel is usually a patach. All right, so that's kind of the giveaway for the future tense, is those little patterns. So compare and contrast that with the pa'al and the pl, and you'll find some identifying characteristics. Okay, the pa'al just is what it is. The pl will always have a dagesh in the second radical, and the hif'il characteristically will have either a yod between the second and third radicals in the future tense, or the hey prefix in the past tense. All right, and then the vowels have different arrangements too. So there are ways to see that, but the main thing I want to point out is that there exists a binyan hifil, and it usually adds a causative flavor to a verb. Okay? Any questions about any of that? What does it taste like? I can't think of anything that sounds remotely close to hifil that's edible. So, I did say flavor. Yes, I was asking for it. One other thing I want to mention, and I've talked about this briefly before, but verbs can take pronominal suffixes. And they are slightly different than the pronominal suffixes that are added to nouns. And on verbs, they serve different function. They indicate the direct object of that noun. So, I'm sorry, of that verb, yes. So, yes, the direct object of the verb. Nouns don't take direct objects. Nouns are direct objects. So anyway, if you see a verb that has a specific ending on it, pronominal ending, and the one we're going to see today is ani. Okay, and these dots are an ellipsis, okay, indicating the rest of the word is over here. All right, and this is a tsera, nun, chirik, yod, so ani ending. This is indicating that the direct object is I, is me. And so if you have a verb that ends in ani, it's saying that the action is being done on me. Okay. There are other ones too. That you can have the action done on us, on you, on him, on her, on them. All right. All of those are possible, and I'm not going to go through all of those today, but I want you to understand what ani means. All right. It's a pronominal suffix added to a verb that indicates the direct object of the verb. And in this case, it means me. All right? All right. So, with no further ado, Psalm 23, verses 1 through 3 are the verses of the day. Let me break this out instead of relying on my memory. All right, so verse 1, just a side note, the first two words of verse 1 in the Hebrew text are Mizmor LeDavid, and I just realized that I misspelled Mizmor in the notes that I printed, or that I posted online. There's supposed to be a Vav between the Mem and Resh, but it's a Cholam nonetheless. Anyway, but Mizmor LeDavid. Mizmor means a psalm or a song, and LeDavid, to or for David, it actually means by David in this case. But the Hebrew text always, there are other words for song too. Shira is a song. There are several words for song, but Mizmor is one. And anyway, in the Hebrew text, in verse 1, they will include sort of the header for the psalm. And English translations don't necessarily have that as verse 1. They might write it as a header underneath the chapter, chapter heading or something, but you don't necessarily realize that that's part of the text itself. So for that reason, the Psalms in the Hebrew text are sometimes numbered differently than the Psalms in the English texts. So now if you're reading this in Hebrew, you're using a Hebrew text, so that's not a problem, but if you notice that discrepancy between an English version of Psalms and a Hebrew version of Psalms, that's usually what it accounts for. You'll usually be one verse ahead in the English. Right? So verse 5 in the English corresponds to verse 6 in the Hebrew because verse 1 in the Hebrew is taken up by the introduction. So just a short note on that. And usually that introduction is something like Mizmor LeDavid, okay, a psalm of David or a psalm of Asaph or some little backstory to the psalm. Okay? Okay, so Yahweh Ro'i. Okay, row E, yes, means my shepherd. So it comes from row E, and it's just row E with the pronominal suffix E. Well, when we add the pronominal suffix, the hey disappears. And the vowel of the suffix replaces whatever vowel would have been there.
Just like the silent E in the English.
Yes, indeed. Exactly like the silent E on the end of many English words. And guess what? E comes from hey. So we're not as far removed from this as you might think. Yes, ice and icy. Okay, although E on the end of icy has nothing to do with possession. But right? So row E is my shepherd, as opposed to just a shepherd. Right? So Yahweh is my shepherd. Okay. Lo echsar. Okay, lo means no or not, and in front of a verb it negates the verb. Echsar. That comes from our root che samech resh, which means to lack. So echsar with that aleph prefix is indicating the pa'al, the binyan pa'al, and the first person future tense singular. So I will lack, but lo negates it, so I will not lack. And a lot of English translations say want, I will not want, and that is an accurate translation because want used to mean lack. It still does, but because you usually desire what you lack, we use it primarily today to indicate desire, which is why we talk about the difference between a want and a need. Originally, those were the same thing. Okay, what you want and what you need both mean something that you lack, and So anyway, but want is just fine, but lack would be a better translation today, given our vernacular. So Yahweh is my shepherd, I will not lack. Bin ot deshe yarbit seini. All right, so bin ot. Yeah, sounds like a
It has a nice flavor to it.
like a Middle Eastern cuisine or something, yarbit seini, but first bin ot.
All I get to eat is the sauce. It's a chef.
Okay, the bait is the prefix in or with. So ne'ot is the plural of na'ah, which I had written on this side that I erased. Okay, na'ah is a pasture. Na'ah is a pasture, so ne'ot is pastures. So bin ne'ot would mean in pastures. All right, deshe means grass or green grass. So ne'ot here is actually in the construct state. So this is in pastures of green grass. Okay, bin ot deshe, yes. Very appetizing looking jar of liquefied grass is sitting in front of me here. It's true. No, I don't think it's necessary to demonstrate. We have an interesting bunch here, and I can't drink stuff like that, but I'm sure it's very good for you. But anyway, so in pastures of green grass, okay, yarbit seini. Yarbit seini. Okay, we can immediately see this ani ending that I just talked about. Okay, so that's indicating the direct object of this verb. So we're left with yarbits. And yarbitz, if you look on your he field chart, you will find that in the future tense, the third person masculine singular form matches this, the yod prefix with the patach, and then our yod between the second and third radical.
He will kick me and I will fall down.
So, ravatz means to lie down or bed down. Okay, so in the this would mean he will lie down, but in the he field it has a causative sense. So he will cause to lie down. Who will he cause to lie down? Me. Yarbit Seni means he will cause me to lie down or to bed down. It doesn't say. Okay, so bin'ot deshe. So in pastures of green grass, he will cause me to lie down. And the subject has already been established in the preceding sentence. Okay, Yahweh ro'i. Okay, Yahweh is my shepherd, so he's the subject. He's the he that's being referred to for the rest of this chapter. Okay. All right. Al me menuchot yenahaleni. So first off, all we recognize right away. That's our preposition that means upon or on or has 1,000 other translations, but that's the basic meaning, on top of. And actually we're going to get to that, how we should translate this in this verse. It's a little different than you might anticipate upon first seeing it. May is the construct state of a word that we're already familiar with, which is mayim. Because mayim has this plural-looking ending, when it's put into the construct state, it takes the plural construct state form. So banim, which is sons, becomes b'nei. Mayim, which is water, becomes me, waters of. Okay, so whatever comes after is directly connected to waters. Okay, so let's see here. Me menuchot. Right, menuchot. And apparently I should have erased this side first, but menucha is a resting place or a comfortable place. So menuchot would be resting places. So waters of the resting places, perhaps the oases, right? Because we are talking about a culture kind of out in regions where there are deserts and oases. Okay, not necessarily the Sahara per se, but you know. When you're shepherding, you wouldn't be like shepherding in Missouri where you just take the deer paths through the woods to get to the different fields. Not that people really do that in Missouri, but you could. But you'd have to go, between some dry, rocky areas to get to the fertile valleys, and those would be places that have water. Okay, so all, which we're going to assume means upon for now, but we'll see quickly that it can't mean that. Me menuchot, waters of the resting places.
Peter was walking on water to rest until he looked down.
Yenahaleni. Peter was also not a sheep.
What are you talking about? You should have said we're either sheep or goats.
He's supposed to feed the sheep.
Yeah, he was. Doesn't that make him a sheep with eyes on the back of his head?
That's a strange doctrine. All right, Yenahaleni. All right, so we can instantly take off the ani. All right, it's telling us the direct object. So we're left with Yenahal. The yod prefix is a good giveaway that we're dealing with the future tense third person. All right. Nahal is our verb to lead. And the vowel pattern indicates the PL. You'll notice there's no dagesh in the second radical, but that's because the second radical is a he, which does not take a dagesh. All right. So this would mean third person, masculine, singular. He will lead, future tense, again, he will lead. So Yenahaleni, he will lead me. And it's the end of the sentence. So in English, we would say, he will lead me, however we translate all, waters of the resting places. Now, usually all means upon, but in context, we really cannot translate this upon. We have to translate all in a different sense here because shepherds don't lead sheep upon the waters. That simply makes no sense. And all, by the way, this is not just we're cherry picking, a reason to use it differently here. All has a lot of different metaphorical senses, or even a lot of different literal senses. So, and it's used this way all the time. And so you have to be. It's a very versatile preposition. It's kind of like the bait prefix. It has a lot of uses. So yes. So in this case, it would mean by. Okay, upon in the sense of overlooking or in the vicinity of. All right, it doesn't mean upon as in upon the waters. Yes, we do have two examples in Scripture of men walking on water. We have none of sheep, and so I do not believe that this means upon the waters of the resting places. I think it means by them. Okay? So, he will lead me by the waters of the resting places. All right, and on to verse 3. Any other comments on verse 2? Okay. All right, verse 3. Nafshi yeshovev.
Soul returns.
All right, nafshi. I believe we covered the word nephesh at some point. If not, I'm pretty sure we did. Nephesh, yeah, we had to cover nephesh. It's such a common word in the Scriptures, it would be irresponsible for me not to talk about nephesh. But yes, it is. It's in the Shema. So yes, we did cover nephesh. Nephesh means a soul or a person. It can be translated life. Okay? So nafshi is my soul, or my life, my person, myself. Okay? All right, yeshovev. Now this, I'm going to have to talk about for a little bit because this is different. We are indeed doing some weird things with this word. Yeshovev. All right, so this looks like a verb, but it looks a little funny. And it is, in fact, a little funny. You won't find this in any of your conjugation charts so far. Now, I've covered 3 of the binyanim, okay, the pa'al, also known as the kal, the pl, and now the hifil, all right? There are 7 major binyanim, so I've covered 3 of them. This you will not find on any of the 7 major binyanim charts, though. This belongs to what is known as a minor binyan. Okay, there are minor binyanim, and this one belongs to the one known as the polel. And I'm not going to go into great detail on that at this time, but what the polel does is something that very, very funny. The root of this word is shin vav beit. And this is a very common word in the Scriptures. It means to turn or to return. So this is the root of the word teshuva, which means repentance. And it's used all the time to refer to all kinds of actions of turning around and returning and going back and that sort of thing. So this is the root. And what the polel does is it takes the third radical and it doubles it. So shuv becomes shovev. And again, I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail on this, but that's what's happening here. That's why this is the root, but this is what the verb looks like. It's not a bait suffix, it's a doubling of the third radical. Now, the rest of the pattern, you can see this unusual vowel scheme here, but the rest of the pattern is very similar to the patterns we see in the other binyanim. So this yod prefix is a pretty good giveaway that we're dealing with the future tense, third person singular. Or third person rather, it could be plural if we had an u on the end here, but we don't. Okay, so this is the future tense, third person, masculine singular form. And one thing that the polel does a lot of times is, like the hifil, it tends to add a causative sense to the verb that it is attached to. So in this case, shin, vav, beit means to return. So put it all together, this would mean he will cause to return. Yeshovev. So he will cause my soul to return. There might be. Or he will cause my life to return. The term nefesh also in this context sometimes refers to, being out of breath, okay, being exhausted. And so getting your soul back, your life back, your breath back. In context of everything that this chapter's been talking about, okay, leading me to the quiet places, the resting places, the pleasant pastures, bedding down, okay, this makes a lot of sense. It's a place where I'm going to rest and be refreshed. And then we can, I guess, move on to another pasture. So, but that's kind of the context here. So nafshi yeshovev is he will cause my nefesh, okay, translate that as you will, my soul, my life, my breath, to return.
He's going to wake up in the morning. That's what it sounds like. I would be to wake up in the morning.
Okay, so again, that is a minor binyan known as the polel.
Sheep just lie down.
And I don't have any notes on that, but that is a feature of Hebrew, is there are a few of these minor binyanim that will pop up here and there. So.
I get the story. They lay down.
All right. Yancheni b'magle tzedek. Yancheni. All right, so right away we can take off any. We know that is the pronominal suffix being attached to the verb. So we're left with this, and this is where certain gizrot become a little bit confusing. Because this yod patach prefix seems to indicate the future tense, third person of binyan hifil, yod patach, so that's a good giveaway there, but we've only got two of our radicals. Now, I didn't cover gizrat lamed hey, okay, but be it known that hey will disappear when we add the pronominal suffixes. Okay, just like it does in the nouns, that hey will disappear on the verbs as well. Okay, which can make things confusing at times. And this is one such time. But the root here is nacha, okay, nun chet he, which means to guide. Okay, So this is a gentle guiding, all right? So this is he will guide me. Now again, this is binyan hifil, and so that usually adds a causative sense, but it's not he will cause me to guide. It is he will guide me. Yeah, I mean, the he feel definitely adds some sense to this, okay, but it's not in a strictly causative sense in this case. Okay, now, and you'll see, and I'm not just making this up, there are many examples of binyan he feel being used where it clearly can't be meant in a causative sense. There's some reason that the he feel is used instead of the pl or the pa'al, but it's not always a causative reason. So, or it's not always adding a causative sense, I should say. All reasons are causative, but okay, so this is he will guide me. Okay, yanecheni b'magle tzedek. Let's see. Tzedek, which you online will see in a moment. All right, b'magle tzedek. So here the bait is our prefix in. Ma'gal is our path, okay, our ox path, right? Plural of ma'gal would be ma'aglim, and ma'agle is the plural in the construct state. So this is in paths of tzedek. Now tzedek is righteousness. Usually righteousness is tzedakah, which is the feminine form with the kametz hey on the end, but tzedek can also be righteous. In this case, tzedek was chosen instead of tzedakah. It could have been either one. But it's not being used as an adjective because this is in the construct state, so it wasn't necessary for it to be in the masculine. Okay, so it could have been tzedek, it could have been tzedakah, for whatever reason. This one is tzedek. I don't know. It may be that it flowed better to have that one less syllable, okay? Because the Psalms are songs, and you know the tune may have accommodated tzedek better than tzedakah. All right, who knows? All right, for whatever reason, though, it's tzedek. You'll see both of them. All right, but tzedakah is the one that you'll probably be more familiar with because when you're learning Hebrew, you're going to be taught tzedakah as righteousness. But tzedek is sometimes used. Malchi tzedek, okay, king of righteousness. It's malchi tzedek, not malchi tzedakah. All right. But then in Deuteronomy 6:25 that says it will be our righteousness to keep all these commandments, it's tzedakah. So, you know, take your pick. They're both basically equivalent. Okay. So in paths of righteousness, and our word before that was yanecheni. Okay. So he will lead me in paths of righteousness. And just to add a little bit of more flavor, as it were, to this, the path being chosen here is an already established path. Okay, this isn't just like on the wild frontier, you know, pick a way to go north, south, east, or west. All right, these are paths that have already been formed by being traveled before again and again and again, and they're visible, ruts in the ground. Okay.
Formed by the olive, it's not the first letter.
To make another hunting analogy, okay, these are the deer paths through the woods, right? These are the established things that you can see. They go somewhere. You know they go somewhere. All right. So it's a path that you already know goes somewhere, but he's going to choose the path of righteousness. Or going to lead me in the path of righteousness, or in the righteous paths, the good ones, the ones that lead toward good things, not the ones that lead to the lion's den, okay, or the bear cave, or whatever Missouri analogy you wish to make. to the pile of corn suspiciously on the ground in the middle of the woods. Okay,
Genetically modified?
it makes no difference to the deer. They still get shot.
What?
All right, and actually the sentence is not quite done. Yancheni b'magle tzedek. All right, he will lead me in paths of righteousness. Lima'an shemo. Yes. Lima'an is our preposition that means for the sake of or for the purpose of. And shemo is Shemo is the word shame, which means name, with the the pronominal suffix o, which means his or of him. So Shemo means his name. Okay, so he will lead me in paths of righteousness for the sake of his name, or for his name's sake, as the as the traditional translation renders it. So, all right, so that is the end of verse 3. As befits his name is another translation. Okay, but it's for the purpose of. Okay, it's his name is the reason that he's leading us in paths of righteousness. Okay, so that's the gist of what's to be taken from that verse. So any comments about, verse 3 or any of the preceding verses?
Can you see any sort of poetic stuff going on in the whole verse and the whole psalm so far?
It's difficult to call it poetic in the sense that we think of poetry, because poetry...
In English, it rhymes.
Yeah, I mean, it rhymes, and I have by no means studied poetry, but I know that there are certain patterns that poems tend to follow. Certain, like haikus are always the same. Yeah, this many syllables here, this many syllables here, this many syllables here. Other poems are the same way. They're just, haikus are, of course, like as short a poem as you could possibly write. But other poems have other structures. There's certain numbers of syllables that are just really have historically been found to go well together. I don't understand Hebrew poetry enough to really comment on it. There are times when it does seem to rhyme because the same suffixes seem to be used again and again. So this,
Like in the Hallelujah, there's a whole lot of God,
right? Yeah, you'll see a lot of ahs at the end of things. E, I. All right, that sort of thing is pretty common. Eem, ot. All right, and so, but you don't really find that here. I mean, Ani rhymes with itself once, and then after that, doesn't really happen. So without knowing the tune that this was set to, and kind of seeing how that flowed, we couldn't really pick out the sort of poetic aspects of this very well. But no, I haven't really noticed kind of how that was put together. I haven't noticed a syllable pattern or anything like that, but this was put to music, so I'm sure it fit into that scheme just like any modern song would. Any relatively modern song would. People like to cheat now. But
Otherwise, they wouldn't be putting the verbs at the end like they do.
yes, that's very true. One thing about this is a lot of these verbs are found at the end of the sentence, and usually the verbs would be found at the beginning of the sentence. Pretty good giveaway we're in poetry land, okay? And another thing that's indicating good poetic sense is the use of all these words that are basically synonymous, okay, to lead and to guide. 2 different words for resting place or pasture, there's a lot of parallel ideas, all right, going through here, and so yes, it's very poetic in that sense. It's using a broader vocabulary base and all that sort of thing. And all of these words relate to shepherding in some sense, okay? And, I mean, why wouldn't it? It's a poem about a shepherd, right? So, and also there's 3 more verses to this beloved chapter, all right, which we're not going to go into today because that would require covering a whole another set of 10 words for vocabulary. One other thing to note about this is all these verbs have been in the future tense, and yet when we're translating them, a lot of times they're translated in the present. Okay, he leads me. Okay, he restores my soul. not he will. And that's because, again, that has to do with the future tense not really being the future tense. It's the imperfect tense. Okay, so it's the idea of an action that has not yet been completed. All right, so it's not he restored my soul, and it's not necessarily he will restore my soul, but he's not doing it right now. It's the idea that this process is not complete. Okay, he's continually leading me, causing me to lie down in green pastures, and that sort of thing. The other comment is I really have absolutely no complaint about the way this was translated in any way. Not that I would be qualified to complain anyway, but it pretty much reads in the English literally what it reads in the Hebrew. There's just a few things, like you wouldn't catch, that this path has to do with oxen pulling a cart in the English, or, notice the subtleties between lead and guide. You wouldn't notice the broad base of vocabulary and that sort of thing. So the Hebrew enriches it to a degree, but the basic meaning is still the same. And for the record, a lot of the scriptures are that way. Okay, so translators in general, I believe, have made a really good, honest effort to convey the meaning, and they're limited primarily by the fact that they're translating to another language that has a totally different cultural base, a totally different base of ideas, whole different environment. And England is not a whole lot like Israel in many ways at all, as far as culture. Yeah, America even less so because we're even further removed. But climate in terms of climate, yes, Southern California or Arizona is kind of in the ballpark. In that you don't have a. Well, anyway, point being, not to get too far off track. Point being, though, there's nothing drastic in Psalms 23 that demands, that we start burning our English Bibles, and because they've got something totally wrong, they don't. That's the one thing I noticed, because sometimes going through, you do notice something that's like, it'd really make a lot more sense if that just carried on through. And in this case, there's nothing of that sort. So but anyway, so those are cases of the future tense, all right, not meaning strictly future. And I don't really have any other commentary per se on the whole set of verses.
Talk about the word cog. That's what the verse of the chapter is cog.
Yes. So, Hebrew pun. So, if there's no further commentary, then that is all we've got for this week. So, hope you enjoyed. Shalom.